This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family, expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Hot take alert. Hot take alert.
Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike Vigil. I'm here with my co-host Sam Cooper. Sam, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, Mike. I'm feeling better than Hamidou Diallo's elbow, which is probably hurting a little bit this morning after it was caught hanging on the rim on that nasty dunk over Shaquille O'Neal last night. And unfortunately, the only good dunk in an entire night of dunk festivities. The dunk contest is really struggling.
Yeah, it's pretty bad when I'd rather watch Joe Harris shoot three-pointers than the entire dunk contest.
Yeah, it is. It is pretty sad when I'd rather watch Nikola Jokic make chest passes through the skills challenge obstacle course. Give me more big men.
That was actually really impressive. He dribbled down to the dribble and then using his right hand without using his left, just one hand shoved it through the hole in the pass. I was pretty impressed with Nikola Jokic. He's a fun guy to watch. It's nice to watch a guy that, you know, this new era of like fat guys in the NBA is kind of fun.
How about Trae Young just straight up cheating with that dribble of throwing the ball like 25 feet in front of him and just like, is that legal? Is that okay now? I guess technically Jason Tatum's half-court shot isn't legal either, but at least that looks cool. Trae Young's just not playing basketball. It's
a soccer move, that's for sure.
It's a soccer move. Yeah, I don't know.
His favorite player is Steve Nash.
Dude, I don't even know, and that's true. I don't even know how they can fix that thing. Like, I watch Saturday Night every year, and it's parts of it are fun, you know, like hearing Shaq say, "I'm the Black Steph Curry," like that's awesome. You know, hearing Reggie Miller say anything, that's not as awesome. But I just don't know how they can fix the night overall. It seems like the crowd was somewhat into it, but it's got some massive problems. And, you know, obviously people talk about the dunk contest every year, and we will get to the Suns in a second. Don't worry, guys. People talk about how to fix the dunk contest every year. Obviously, you want more star talent in there, but there's just no incentive for any of those guys to do it. So you've got guys like Diallo and who else was even in it last night? Dennis Smith Jr., John Collins, you know, not household names starring in the dunk contest. So it is what it is.
Yeah, people are saying that next year will be great because Zion will be in it. And part of me is thinking, like, at this point, does he even need to do it?
No.
Is there a point for him doing it? He's already this massive star. He's got more Instagram followers than any college basketball player of all time. His level of fame on the internet is only going to explode even more, especially if he ends up on a team like the Knicks. There's no real benefit to him doing it other than, I guess, like a brand building thing with him, just showing that he's amazing at dunking. But that's going to happen in games. I'm not sure. It might be like LeBron, where what he does on the court is so impressive, there's no real reason for him to go into a dunk contest and potentially risk embarrassing yourself on national TV by tripping over a model of the Wright brothers plane in the middle of your dunk contest.
You know, that was a pretty cool. That was
like a Tuskegee Airman.
That was a pretty cool dunk. Had he not broken the model on the way up, I think he got it on the way up and on the way down. But
oh man,
if he could have gotten that's a good from John Collins. That's a good dunk, arguably better than, you know. That's like there are some lame dunks that we've had in the past. Blake Griffin jumping over the hood of a Kia, like jumping over an airplane is cooler than that, even if it's a model airplane. So I don't know. I don't know how they can fix it, man. Like they're coming up with inventive ideas. They're bringing out guys, but then it's just it's not fully connecting for some reason. And you know, the problem has always been, like with Dennis Smith Jr. last night, if you can nail a great dunk on the first or second attempt, you get the entire crowd into it. At a certain point, if it's the fourth or fifth attempt and you're not getting it, it just sucks all the momentum out of the building. I mean, at least now they have this system where you only get a certain amount of attempts because, NBA fans will remember back in the day, I think one year was it Chris Birdman Anderson? Like back in the mid 2000s. I don't even remember when this was. Had 20 attempts on a dunk before he finally got it. It's like at that point, just do a layup, dude. Just get it over with.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I think it's funny that there's like a designated rapper for each second dunk.
That's
now
funny.
too. I think that one of the best moments of the dunks was J. Cole going up and trying to dunk it. That was actually like the most excited I was the entire night.
That's probably the most excited the internet got all night, right? Seeing J. Cole blow
including people in the building, I think.
Yeah.
You could see Karl Anthony Towns on the sideline almost pass out when J. Cole went up for a dunk. To me, that's the type of thing that actually makes it fun. And it's ironic because those guys were there to just watch. The guys that were actually involved with the show were Karl Anthony Towns not knowing how to use a microphone and Ludacris standing on a crate, which apparently was hilarious to him. It's the NBA is not quite there as far as what they present to the public, but I think there's still organic moments that can come out of it that are still kind of fun. Like J. Cole.
Arguably all of my favorite moments from last night, and there's the last thing I'll say about it, came from not the actual NBA players. It came from J. Cole blowing a dunk, Ray Allen missing 5 threes for charity. Well, I guess one came from Devin Booker with the classic fuck reaction. That was a good one after his first round. But for the most part, the funniest moments of the night, Shaq, being Shaq, were not coming from the actual guys who were supposed to be headlining this performance, and that's a problem.
Yeah, it's a difficult place. I don't think that they're going to fix it anytime soon. The state of internet culture and how quickly people make fun of anyone who makes any sort of mistake on a public forum like that, I don't think a lot of players are going to be super encouraged to jump into it. But the Rising Stars game did happen as well, and DeAndre Ayton, a Phoenix Suns player, this is a Suns podcast after all, competed in that Rising Stars game. And to me, actually, this Rising Stars game, and this is kind of the state of being a Suns fan in general, was kind of the only moment I was looking forward to in this weekend. We haven't watched the All-Star game that's coming tonight. If something amazing happens, I'm sorry we didn't cover it. There's no Suns players in it anyway, but we didn't have to really worry about that. The All-Star games are usually boring. But the Rising Stars game could be fun. It could be competitive. At the very least, you get to see the guys who could be the future of the NBA competing against each other and playing together. But it started really boring. Not a lot of defense. What did you think of the game?
I mean, not a lot of defense, yeah. Did you expect defense? Here's what we learned from the Rising Stars game, since, after all, this is our hot take episode. DeAndre Ayton, not a single three. He tried to hit them, but he couldn't. Not a single block. He finished with the worst plus-minus of anyone on the world team. All of these advanced statistics tell me that DeAndre Ayton is actually the worst player that was on the court for the Rising Stars game, and the Suns selected a bona fide bust. So, we'll just leave that where it is. Not a single redeeming moment for the rookie. And that's it for me, guys. See you next year.
Yeah, it's funny to start the game because there's two types of players I think that play in either types of game, the actual All-Star game or the Rising Stars game. There's the young guys that are feeling it out and they're trying to see what the tone of the game is going to be. And then there's the tone setters. There's the guys that get onto the floor and they're like, this is my game, and I'm going to set the tone of what this game is going to be. And in this game, that was clearly Ben Simmons. There was a little bit of Jason Tatum, Kyle Kuzma that were really trying to set the tone of the game and really going after that Rising Stars MVP trophy, the most important trophy of the weekend. And I think for guys like DeAndre Ayton, it's clear when the game started, he was feeling it out. He was trying to figure out how much effort he was to put into running the floor, into playing defense, because it's a weird thing where you're used to competing your entire life and then you get on the court with a bunch of other amazing players and there's just no competition at all. And it will be interesting to see if he plays in this game next year as his confidence builds, if he will be one of the guys that steps foot onto the court and says, I'm going to set the tone this year. I'm not going to feel it out and wait for somebody else to set the tone, because I think that's the type of thing that Suns fans want out of him now. And really Luka Doncic didn't really do that. None of the rookies really did that. The guys that were really the tone setters were guys that played last year and they kind of know what they're capable of doing in the NBA and they're sort of used to that spotlight. Interesting game. Didn't do a lot for his reputation of not playing defense because nobody was.
Yeah.
That's the part that kind of sucks.
And to talk seriously about it, he had a good game. The stat line, I think, finished 15 points, 8 rebounds. He did take a few threes. He got some assists, including some nice outlet passes.
5 assists.
Yeah, 5 assists, no turnovers. So, arguably better playmaker than Ben Simmons now. But I think that's the other problem is when you're a player with the play style of DeAndre Ayton and you're playing in a game like this, how exactly do you get involved? You're not going to get post-up opportunities. It's not that type of game. You're basically either going to get trailing threes, which we know to this point has not been his game. It was nice to see him try a couple. Or you're going to get transition dunks and alley-oops, and that's really sort of what he was doing as a rim runner. But you're absolutely right. He was feeling it out. I don't think he got his second field goal until like late in the second quarter or something like that. Like he went into the half with no more than a couple of points.
I think you watch how Marvin Bagley stepped onto the floor, and that's what you want to do if you want to make an impression in this type of game. What Marvin Bagley did is sprint. He sprinted down the floor every single time there was a change of possession. And if you sprint down the floor as a big man, those guys, they're either going to try and dunk it themselves, or if there's an open dunk for you, they're just going to give it up to you. And I think, with Marvin Bagley, he had Trae Young. So you have guys that are really pushing it forward and trying to get assists, and that's the way to score. And I think when Ayton came back in after watching Bagley on the floor, he was definitely putting a little more effort into running down the floor, and he got a few easy buckets. But you're right, he did look actually kind of good. He on those outlet passes, there was one where he just caught the ball, immediately turned around, and just one hand winged it down the floor, and it was a really nice pass to an open fast break.
Kevin loved that.
And we're going to talk about fast break points. Yeah, we're going to talk about fast break points later because we don't get a lot of them, and I think we're not really using that skill that he has as far as those outlet passes correctly. We don't have a lot of personnel for it, but it's still unfortunate that we can't take advantage of something like that. A really interesting game, just not a lot going on in the game, but there was a profile written about DeAndre Ayton sort of leading into this game where he had some interesting quotes. So I do want to read one. He was asked about the criticisms that are sort of against him about his defense, and he said, "I'm tired of hearing that. I went through that in college, and I'm going through it in the NBA. I don't know what you guys want from me. I'm 7'1". I'm guarding point guards. I don't understand how much I have to show. I'm guarding the perimeter, running after guards across screens, pin downs, running through dribble handoffs, pick and roll ball screens, and as a 7-footer. In the NBA, I have to protect the rim. I love defense. I'm not struggling on defense. I love to make my opponent look bad. I love defense." This was the quote by DeAndre Ayton about his defense and the criticisms against him so far in the NBA, and the same criticisms that have been sort of surrounding him his entire career, including college and likely in high school as well. This quote was taken very differently by different types of people on the internet, as you can imagine. Overall, I think it's an interesting quote. I'll give my thoughts on it in a second, but Sam, what did you think about this quote overall?
Yeah, I don't see any reason. I see why Ayton haters might take this the wrong way. I like to see the confidence. Now, do I think he's doing that great on defense as a rookie? No, he's quite frankly not. But I do think he has shown flashes of a lot of successful defense. The part where he's talking about he's guarding point guards, he's having a, move well on screens and shuffle his feet on the perimeter. All of that stuff is true. It's not just about rim protection anymore as a 7-footer in the NBA on defense. So, I think he's got a long way to go in terms of his team defense. And, maybe it would have been nice to see him sort of acknowledge that. But I truly do believe him when he says, "I love defense." And I've seen the potential of him as a one-on-one defender. I think, frankly, in a lot of instances, he's been pretty good, and he can get a lot better on that end. So I don't see anything to blow out of proportion here.
I think that what he is responding to is different than the criticisms that people vault against him. And what I mean by that is the general criticisms for big men in defense in the NBA is that they're not able to keep up with guards. So one of the big problems with a guy like Enes Kanter, for example, Enes Kanter, a lot of people compare unfairly DeAndre Ayton to Enes Kanter. And Enes Kanter's big problem is when he's in the playoffs, when he was in the playoffs with OKC, All teams had to do was force a switch on a pick and roll and force Enes Kanter to guard the perimeter, and then that guard on the perimeter would just isolate him and attack him one-on-one, and they were able to either get by him or create enough separation to shoot over him. That's a different kind of problem than what DeAndre Ayton has. And I think what he's looking at is he's thinking, this is what centers are generally criticized for, and I'm actually good at that. And to his credit, he is good at that, especially for his age and his experience in the NBA. He's very good at switching onto guards. He's good at keeping up with people on the perimeter. He can sort of absorb contact, move his feet quick enough, and contest without fouling pretty consistently on the perimeter. Where DeAndre Ayton struggles is team defense outside of that. So a lot of what team defense is for big men is not necessarily guarding a player. It's what they call guarding in space. So what they have to do, for example, on a pick and roll, if you do not switch on a pick and roll, you have to contain the person who's on ball and keep another eye on the guy who's rolling to the basket or potentially popping out for a shot. And what's difficult in that scenario is you're kind of guarding no one while sort of guarding two people at the same time. And to me, this type of defense is something that has to develop in the NBA, because in college, there's not a lot of spacing the floor pick and rolls. So he has an opportunity to get a lot better at guarding in space, but he's not very good at that right now. It's difficult to keep track of two guys at the same time, especially when you don't have a lot of experience doing this. So I think I don't mind the quote either. I think that he is just frustrated with constantly being asked about something he's not good at when he's so good at so many other things. It's just unfortunate this is the way that we sort of analyze players at this point. We focus on the one thing they're not good at and just hammer them with it over and over and over again. So I think overall the quote is not bad. I'm not a huge fan of I'm not struggling on defense. I love to make my opponent look bad. I think that part is kind of true in a sense, but at the same time, he does struggle in some areas. So I think he's right, and I also think he's wrong. I still like the quote overall because I don't want him to say, oh yeah, I'm really bad at defense. I hope I can get better someday. That's not great. I want him to show some confidence. I want him to show some drive. But what do you think about that, about as far as what he's good at and what he's not?
Yeah, well, I think it's really interesting, the problem you bring up about it's a matter of expectations, and we love to focus on the one weakness. It makes sense that DeAndre is getting frustrated at this point in the season because he's having expectations heaped on him as the number one pick on a losing team in a way that we're not seeing from a lot of other rookies. We're sort of glossing over the flaws, I think, of a lot of other rookies. When you see people talk about how a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr. or Wendell Carter has been a better big man than DeAndre Ayton, when that's just verifiably false this season, or when they talk about the potential of guys like that to do better. I think Ayton is sort of struggling with the expectations of a number one pick, and with the fact that when you're just on an 11-win team, you don't get praise for all of your strengths, as he's been doing. He's had a great season overall, and the sad truth is just that these criticisms are going to continue to come, as they've been coming at Devin Booker for the past couple of seasons, until this team can find a way to win games, which they're just not doing right now for a multitude of reasons. But, you know, he can marginally improve on defense all he want. The positive press comes with an improvement in the win-loss record at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Ayton, I think he should continue to answer questions this way. To me, though, I just think there's not a lot of ways when you're asked, hey, this thing that everyone criticizes you for not being good at, can you talk about it? There's not a lot of good ways to answer that kind of question.
Absolutely.
You either sort of say, you either say I'm not good at that, or you say, nope, I'm good at that. I'm working really hard on it, and I want to get credit for what I'm working hard on. And I think he approached this one the right way, especially right before this weekend where people are supposed to sort of celebrate what NBA players are good at. Another Phoenix Sun was part of Taco Bell All-Star Saturday Night, as they call it. Devin Booker competed in the three-point shootout, and he didn't get past the first round. Now, he's been, as we all know, he's been struggling with his three-point shot lately. I think it's the worst percentage of his career so far. He talked about that he really wanted to win this, and I understand that, right? He's sort of been shut out of every other All-Star event. So to want to win this makes sense for him because he gets some credit for being good and being Just a guy that's on a team that did not really surround him with the right pieces in order to win. And he wants a little bit of individual credit. I think that's a very human thing to want. So the 23 is a really good score. Last year he had 19 in the first round, and he made it to the second round, and he won with that 28, the highest score ever. So the fact that he did not get past the first round with that 23, it's unfortunate. It's kind of crazy. There's a lot of really good shooters in the NBA. Joe Harris went on to win. Not the most exciting event. What'd you think about the three-point shootout?
I'm happy for Joe Harris, man. I really like when sort of underrated, lesser-known players win those sorts of events. Not that I wasn't rooting for Devin Booker, but you basically said it all. There's not much to say here. It was a good contest. A 23 usually gets you into the championship round. This time it didn't. And, man, unfortunately, Steph Curry is just... he's super good. If Steph Curry weren't in that tournament, then Booker probably advances, but just didn't happen this time.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to introduce a brand new segment where we take a look at some of the hot takes that have been floating around the internet, and we dissect them a little bit and talk about whether or not it has merit. So we'll be right back with some hot takes. One thing we're going to talk about before we get into the hot take segment is James Jones appeared on the Burns and Gambo show recently and said, according to Evan Sidery, veteran guys that can compete and earn their opportunity will be added to the team this offseason. And Phoenix wants to create enough pressure so the young core has to grow and not wait for their own timeline. Very interesting quotes from James Jones coming out this about team building, sort of implying that James Jones is going to be the general manager of this team in the future, by the way. A separate story from this overall quote. There's a lot of interesting things to talk about from this quote. What did you think about it, Sam?
Well, first of all, just what you said about James Jones. I think regardless of if you're the interim or not, you're always planning for the future. You're doing what you can to set the team up in the best way possible for the future. Even if... look, unfortunately, James Jones might be our general manager going forward. I just don't think that's locked in stone yet, and I don't think we can really say anything about it. For the quote itself, I think people are freaking out about the content of it a little bit too much. They're taking this quote about we want to add veterans and accelerate the timeline and immediately jumping to, oh no, they're going to add more Jamal Crawfords, Trevor Arizas, Ryan Andersons, Tyson Chandlers, and I think that's not necessarily what we're talking about here. We don't have enough information yet to know exactly what James Jones is talking about without context, but I think it's more likely that they're looking for veterans in the 25 to 30 age range. They're looking for guys that can still play and can play for the next, if you hand them a 3 to 4 year contract, aren't going to immediately spiral downhill and are hopefully young enough in their careers that they're actually excited to play here and are going to give you good production and aren't just going to check out by game number 15 of the season like a guy like Trevor Ariza did. So, I mean, we've talked about it before with the power forward position. We'll talk about with the point guard position in the future on our YouTube channel, but I think there's a plethora of options there for the Suns in free agency where you can go after a guy who's 27 years old, who is technically a veteran and has more experience than the guys in your current roster, but you're not going after these washed up bums.
Yeah, we've talked about Terry Rozier, Malcolm Brogdon, is another guy, Ricky Rubio, Goran Dragic, Nikola Mirotic, Aminu, Tobias Harris. These are all guys that could potentially be available on the free agent market. To me, one of the quotes I think that stood out overall was James Jones talking about adding up to 5 or 6 guys in that age range between 25 and 30. And to me, just factually, you can't do that in free agency alone. So what we're looking at is this roster looking drastically different next year. One of the hot takes I actually got texted that is not going to be part of our hot take segment next, but it was that only maybe 5 of these guys will be on the team next year. And I think that's a fair assessment to make. I actually don't think that's as much of a hot take as it seems. I think this roster is going to be drastically different next year, and it should be. I'm just interested overall. I think at this point, the main question going into this will be who is the person making those decisions. If it's James Jones, and I think it will be. I think you're right about that, Max. I'm sorry, Sam. I just think it's most likely that...
What?
I think it's just most likely I'm
getting my
getting
name
podcast
wrong
boys
now?
mixed up. I'm looking at a tweet that says Maxi Kleber, so
Okay, whatever. Call me Maxie the rest of the episode.
all right, you're Maxi now. I think that it's most likely that James Jones is going to be the guy making these decisions because it just seems like a Robert Sarver-esque decision to make as far as just next man up and let's pay him as little as possible because he's new to this. and I just think that's the type of thing Sarver's going to do. So we'll see. Going forward, that's going to be a big story for this team as far as what we're going to look like next season. But for now, let's get into some hot takes.
Hot take alert. Hot take alert.
So for this segment, what we're going to do is we're going to break down a few hot takes. We'll see how much we get through in the normal podcast time length here. And we're going to talk about what makes sense about them and maybe what does not make sense about them. So Sam and I, we scoured the internet. We found the most interesting of the hot takes that are appearing over the last few weeks. And let's go over some of those right now. So the first hot take we're going to talk about is the Phoenix Suns are better with Devin Booker off the floor. So without Devin Booker on the floor, the Phoenix Suns are better. First of all, at first glance, to me, this hot take is insane. Devin Booker is our best player, and it's crazy to point out that we're better without him. This take has also taken a couple of different forms. Some of them are, we're better without Devin Booker. When he's injured, we look better. Some of them are, the team tries harder without him on the floor because they know they're going to have more of an opportunity. And some of them are, let's trade Devin Booker for garbage and see what the team looks like
we'll
without him.
talk about that.
You found an interesting one, right?
Someone, I'm not naming any names, but someone suggested Devin Booker for Evan Fournier and the Magic's first-round pick. What are you guys doing? I mean, Devin Booker, at the very least, at this point, has more trade value than that. If you really want to blow up the team, I think you get some good value out of him. But yeah, these takes, they're funny. So you have some stats about it, Mike. Maybe you should go into it.
I think what's interesting is, so what I did is I looked at the net rating for every player on the Phoenix Suns, and I'll tell you that just net rating on the overall length of the season, Devin Booker the team is not better with him off the floor. We'll just say that. But I wanted to look at it a little more granularly. I separated it from the first few months of the season to the last few months of the season. And from the beginning of the season to December 1st, Devin Booker had the second best net rating of all the rotation guys after Mikal Bridges. And these are guys who play minutes. I separated it by the actual amount of minutes played. So he was second only to Mikal Bridges in that stat. Since that moment, since December 1st, he actually has the worst net rating of all the rotation players except for Tyler Johnson. And then, of course, we can all expect Jamal Crawford is one of the worst in that stat as well. But he's at a net rating of a negative 11.6 since that moment. And there's a couple things to talk about with Devin Booker, right? He has been injured. He's been coming back from a few different injuries. But I think the last few weeks, I think the criticism surrounding him as far as his effort, his body language, and sort of how he looks while he's on the floor, I actually think a lot of that criticism is fair. I think that he has not been putting in the same type of effort that we've gotten used to with Devin Booker. So although I don't think the Suns are better without Devin Booker, I do think that the criticisms lofted at Devin Booker for the last few weeks as far as what he's been doing on the floor are fair. I think that's my overall take on this hot take. But what do you think?
I still think it's insane to say the Suns. Just watch the Suns without Devin Booker on the floor. I think if you really think that the Suns are better, that they try more, it really comes down to a matter of expectations again. Like I was talking about with DeAndre Ayton earlier. When I read that Devin Booker is not going to play in a basketball game for the Phoenix Suns, to speak for myself personally, my expectations are, as someone who's watched virtually every Suns game for the past decade, it's hard to convince myself to even want to watch the game in the first place. I enter the game expecting a 30-point blowout, and then if the Suns only lose by 15, I'm impressed. Whereas when I see Devin Booker is playing, knowing the types of stats that he's putting up this year, I really expect the Suns to be competitive in games, and then oftentimes I'm let down. And I think that's sort of what it comes down to is I think the truth is the Suns are better with Devin Booker on the floor, but it's a subtle enough difference that it really doesn't necessarily come to fruition in terms of impacting the win-loss record in the way we would like it to. But to say that the Suns are better with him off the floor, it's simply false. You can get excited about the potential of a guy like Josh Jackson all you want, but when Devin Booker isn't playing and Josh Jackson becomes, the number one scoring option as he's been doing in some of these recent games, Josh Jackson playing at his absolute best is still a far, far worse player than Devin Booker on an average night. The gravity that Devin Booker creates on offense, his ability to hit players with cross-court passes, find them in the corner, his improved playmaking, all of these things that we've talked about all throughout the season, it's just absurd to throw all of this on his shoulders.
The great Jalen Rose says, happiness is a function of expectations. More is expected of the Phoenix Suns when Devin Booker's on the floor, so if they continue to perform badly, it feels a lot worse for Suns fans who expect more out of the team when he's on the floor. The fact is this team is awful, and especially if you take away TJ Warren and DeAnthony Melton. We already struggle enough at point guard, and you're taking the one good point guard prospect we have off of our roster. That really hurts. We're also the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA, and we took our best three-point shooter out of the rotation. So what Devin Booker has been dealing with for the last few weeks, I'm not going to excuse his body language. I'm not going to excuse his effort for the last few weeks. I do think that he should be putting more into it, but I don't think he really shoulders the entire blame for that. I think what he's surrounded by is pretty awful, and I think any human would be affected by this level of just losing constantly. You're constantly losing, and he's at a place in his career where he's capable of putting up 25 points and 7 assists a game. He should win. He wants to win. It makes sense. Now, a lot of this blame, though, I think needs to be put on the coaching staff. They need to prepare these guys to properly compete, whether or not their star player is on the floor with them. And it'll be interesting to see after this break if we can get DeAnthony Melton and TJ Warren back on the floor soon and see how that affects the effort of everyone on the floor. But I think this leads nicely into our second hot take.
Hot take alert.
This hot take has been floating around on the internet since probably the first game of the season, and this one is Igor Kokoshkov, coach of the Phoenix Suns, should be fired. Fired. It's never more or never less than that. It's always the extreme. He should be fired.
I saw this one put very eloquently by a user on Facebook who just said, "This coach is garbage." And I liked that as a description. Just not even dignifying him with the use of his name, or the people who still call him Igor. That's funny too. But not. I didn't even try to spell it out. Just this coach, whoever he is garbage. Let's go get a new one. So let's talk. I want to talk about this one. I want to bring up the facts. And I think my greater point. I don't know actually how you feel about. I think I know how you feel about this one, Mike. But I'll have to wait to see exactly what you think here. But I want to take a second to defend Igor and make the point that, look, guys, there's no way to be happy with the results that we've seen from this team. Basketball Reference has a stat, SRS. It takes into account your strength of schedule and filters it sort of into an overall score in terms of how good or bad your team has been. The Suns went from a negative 8.8 SRS last year to a negative 8.82 so far this year. So they are basically, they were 30th out of 30 teams last year. They are 29th this year. Only the Knicks are worse. So slice it any way you want, but at least statistically, it looks like the Suns are basically the same garbage product. But if you dig down into the numbers, Igor's problems, his system has improved the Suns in a number of ways. Roster construction is the only thing that's holding him back. The Suns went from 29th in the league in assists last year to 17th this year without increasing their turnovers at all, without a point guard. With your only point guards being Devin Booker playing in that role, a 38-year-old Jamal Crawford, and struggling rookies in DeAnthony Melton and Elie Kobo, you've gone from basically the worst passing team in the NBA to middle of the pack without increasing your turnovers. That right there is huge. On the defensive end, we've talked about the Suns playing the passing lanes, getting deflections, their roster construction, looking for guys with length like DeAnthony Melton and Mikal Bridges, and they went from 27th in steals to 2nd in one season, which is an absurd turnaround and hasn't exactly reflected itself in a better defensive rating. I understand, because so much of the team's team defense and half-court defense still really struggles. Their transition defense was a dumpster fire, frankly, at the beginning of the season, and that led to a lot of losing games back when Ariza and Anderson were starting. But it has made some improvement in some sense with the steals. It's created more fast break opportunities for the Suns as of late, more transition points. They're starting to get better in that area. The only area where they've gotten a lot worse is rebounding, and that's simply because of roster construction. They went from 14th last year in offensive rebound percentage to 26th this year. They went from 23rd in defensive rebound percentage, already bad, to dead last in 30th. They're one of the worst teams at surrendering second chance points to other teams because, and we've talked about it again all season long, you have Ayton or Holmes in there as your only guy who can rebound and no one around them at the power forward or small forward position who can grab the rebound. Last season, if you look at the roster, as shitty and flawed as Marquise Chris was as a player, at the end of the day, he was a natural, able-bodied power forward who grabbed about 9 rebounds per 36 minutes. The Suns don't have anyone like that on the roster this year. You've got Ayton and Holmes trading off at the center position to grab rebounds. You don't play the two of them at once. And after those two, the next best rebounder in our entire regular rotation is Josh Jackson at 6 rebounds per 36 minutes. So, there's tons of problems. There's no easy one simple fix for this roster. I haven't been thrilled with Igor's rotations. I haven't been thrilled with him sort of forcing his system. I think he could be using DeAndre Ayton in more effective ways, and we can talk about that in a second. But a lot of the problems that this team is facing is purely on James Jones and Ryan McDonough and all of the roster construction. And you can't just, hand Igor a shit sandwich and expect him to turn it into a playoff team in the Western Conference.
I think that the number one thing you can defend him for is his rotations, and that's because this roster it just doesn't make sense. There's so many flaws. The fact that you just mentioned it, our power forward currently, the person starting at power forward only averages 6 rebounds per 36 minutes, is a perfect example of what we're dealing with as far as this team goes. But these hot takes, they don't come from nowhere. I think every year there's someone shouting for the coach to be fired regardless of who it is. But I think there are some fair criticisms of Igor Kokoschka. But I will say, just on face value, the idea that he should be fired is completely insane. This team has dealt with enough, just sort of everything upending every single season. We're done with that. We need a little bit of structure to be in place year over year in order for these guys to properly develop. I don't want to see the new diary from Josh Jackson at the beginning of next year talking about dealing with his 4th coach in 3 years. It's enough for him already. But there's a couple things that bother me about Igor Kokoschka so far. We haven't really done a check-in on how we feel about him. One, I think his end of game, how he's dealt with the end of game scenarios have not been great so far. Now, I will say the Suns have not been in a lot of games late in the game, so he doesn't have a lot of experience coaching in those scenarios. But to me, an end of game scenario is something that you should be prepared for. There should be plans in place. Now, there was a couple of games that I can refer to, and I wish I would have had the games in them, but one of them was a classic one where Devin Booker absolutely lost his mind when they did not call a timeout to foul when they were up by 3 so that the other team would get 2. We ended up going into overtime because they hit a 3-pointer, and we lost in overtime with Devin Booker being incredibly frustrated by the end of that game. The other scenario was a game where we were down by 4, and I believe there was 18, 19 seconds left, and we didn't foul until there was about 8 seconds left, and no coach was on the floor yelling at the team to foul. Those types of things bother me. The other thing that bothers me is in the last 2 seasons, previous to these seasons, we didn't really have a point guard last year at least, and we were still 3rd in pace. And the season before that, we were 2nd in pace. This season, we are 12th in pace. For a team that struggles so much to get easy buckets, it would make sense for us to get out there and run on the floor. And we're just not. We're not. And it really highlighted to me in the game against Sacramento, where Sacramento absolutely takes off no matter what the scenario is. They're constantly running. And of course, they have a guy like De'Aaron Fox who's really capable of doing that constantly. But we have a lot of young guys on the team. We have TJ Warren, we have Josh Jackson, Devin Booker is capable of doing it. And even DeAndre Ayton, for his size, is great at running the floor. And we just don't take advantage of fast breaks like we could. So while I think it's insane that Igor Kokoschka should be fired, I think there are areas that this team can improve, and I'm going to be following that very closely And I think as far as this team, there's so many issues, right? There's so much shit. It's difficult to focus on individual things and say, how come we're not improving here? There's a lot you have to focus on. So incremental improvements over time is what we can hope for. And I think, these types of things that I'm looking at, I would like to see those improve over time.
All of those guys you mentioned for the frustration that you have with the transition opportunities. I mean, Ayton's not going to be with the ball in his hands. Josh Jackson's not usually doesn't usually have the ball in his hands. Same for TJ Warren. It comes down to the point guard. It's the point guard's responsibility to push the pace, and that's why I liked Anthony Melton a lot. And I'm waiting for him to come back. As useless as he often is on offense, at least he pushes the pace and gets the ball into the half court offense quickly. Looks for transition opportunities. He can't hit an open three. But the real area, I mean, Jamal Crawford's just not going to create transition opportunities for your offense. Mm-hmm. And Elliot Kobo, surprisingly, I mean, he's got young legs, but I think that's an area where he's really struggled as well. So, again, point guard comes down to that, and the Suns need to add a good one this summer.
Yeah, I guess part of me thinks that even if it turns into some turnovers, that's okay. It's such a struggle to score in the half court. I think that it's okay.
It's such a struggle
to sort of turn it over.
It's such a struggle to score in the half court when you have players that can't hit open shots. We don't talk enough. I feel like we talked so much last year about how the Suns were the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA, and it culminated in Ryan McDonough at the beginning of the offseason saying, hey, we're really going to focus on adding shooters. And now what happened this year is the most unexpected turn by any player in terms of three-point shooting in the entire NBA happened for the Phoenix Suns, and TJ Warren literally doubling his three-point percentage, and we're still the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA. That really says something about where this team is at right now and its roster construction, and why, going back a second to that hot take that we had texted to us earlier about this team will only have 5 or 6 of its players on the roster next year. It depends on who's in charge. To see how much I really trust them to make the right moves. But in theory, that's absolutely fine with me. You guys have Stockholm Syndrome, a lot of you, from what I read from you online. You get way too attached to garbage players. It's not a bad idea for the Suns to trade a lot of this team away and overhaul, because clearly whatever they're doing right now is not working, and they have too many problems to count.
I think the main point with Igor Kokoshkov, I think going forward, and it's been this case for the last few months, until we see a roster that allows him to run an NBA team out on the floor, it's difficult to really judge how good he's been. And I think that's where we're both at right now, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Let's move on to our next hot take. This one's very frustrating for me. It is DeAndre Ayton is the 5th best rookie from the 2018 rookie class.
Where did you find
this? I saw some people making lists of rookies so far. There was one. This is a garbage. This is a garbage take. But go ahead, Sam. What do you think?
No, wait. Finish. Where'd you find it? Making lists. Where do these people live?
People making lists of rookies so far. A lot of it, where do these people live? I think a lot of it is people saying what do they want going forward, yeah. and DeAndre Ayton is never at the top of that list. He's sometimes not even close to the top of that list. People take a really strong stance on DeAndre Ayton for some reason. I don't really know what it is. I guess it's because he's on the Suns and the Suns have been so garbage, but it's just a little unfair to put it all on him. Now, just to let you know some of the advanced stats around DeAndre Ayton, he's leading the league in win shares for rookies, according to Basketball Reference. He's leading the league in the player impact estimate, which is the main NBA.com advanced statistic that's sort of all encompassing. He has historic efficiency among rookie big men. His player comps for his rookie year are Karl-Anthony Towns, David Robinson. There's all these Hall of Famers that are sort of mixed in with that. To me, this is a completely garbage take, and I just wanted to take the time in this hot take segment to really defend our rookie big men, because it's kind of insane the way that people are turning on him, right?
There's not a stat you can find where among qualified rookies, DeAndre Ayton is only 5th best. You mentioned he's first in win shares, even ahead of Luka Doncic. He's first in player efficiency rating. Yeah. He's first in player impact. As you said, he's second in value over replacement player. He's second in BPM. He's second in value over replacement player. He's third in points per game, first in rebounds per game. You want to shit on his rim protection, he's still fourth in blocks per game. There is not a stat that you can find where DeAndre Ayton is only the fifth best rookie, so get out of here with that bullshit right now. That's where I'm starting with this. And secondly, if we're talking about evaluating him in the future, now that becomes a little bit of a different question, but I really think, again, it's a matter of expectations. A lot of these blog boys are not facing the reality of a guy like Wendell Carter or Jaren Jackson Jr., some of their flaws, because these are the players that I most commonly see sort of compared to Ayton in terms of, can these guys become generational big men? Jaren Jackson Jr. and Wendell Carter, there's a reason these guys are playing 25 minutes a game and not the same amount of time as Ayton, even though they're starting every game. It's because both of them average 5 fouls per 36 minutes. It was their biggest problem coming out of the gate in college, especially for a guy like Triple J, and it remains a problem that people are not talking about. He doubles up Ayton in terms of blocks per game. He's a much more effective rim protector. He's got the better physical tools and better defensive instincts in general, and I will admit all of that. But at the end of the day, he's still a guy, he's getting half as many rebounds as Ayton. He's not scoring as efficiently. Wendell Carter especially is not scoring as efficiently. He's not even close to the finisher that Ayton is on the inside, and doesn't have the same touch either. So it's just absurd to me that we're talking about some of these just factually lesser big men as if they have generational talent. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. is a perfect role player type of center who maybe has the potential to be a superstar, but I think in most scenarios it's much more likely that he becomes a Miles Turner type of player. Fantastic defender, good three-point shooter, but not the same sort of physical freak and not the same sort of just natural offensive talent as a guy like DeAndre Ayton. So it is absurd to me overall, if I just have to conclude this up, to say that DeAndre Ayton is either the fifth best rookie this year or that he's only fifth if you look at all of these guys and trying to project them going forward. Just doesn't make any sense.
Even so, we talked about what DeAndre Ayton is criticized for in that when he was profiled earlier this week, and part of that was his defense. Like, that's where you can really take aim at him. But let's talk about before the season. The other criticism he got was creating his own shot. And from what we've seen, we can kind of just dump it down into the post for him, and he can create his own shot. Even one of the biggest criticisms that was lofted against him before the season, I think he's proven that that's something that he's going to be capable of doing in the future. It's really difficult to find a flaw in DeAndre Ayton's game outside of his defensive awareness off the ball. I still think he's pretty good on the ball. And if that's his one flaw, the idea that he cannot improve that is insane to me, as far as him being sort of viewed as one of the most coachable players coming into the league. And the fact that people tend to turn on him, I think we can kind of take aim at it, and we could even talk about it in our next hot take. This is a problem with draft Twitter in general, and for some reason, it's specific to Twitter. I don't really see it on Reddit. I don't really see it on Facebook, in the Facebook groups that I've seen so far, although there's enough crazy shit in there. But as far as draft Twitter, there's something about wanting to be right, and this sort of mentality of the most important thing is for me to prove that my predictions before this draft were absolutely correct. And what that does is it creates this confirmation bias that just creeps in every year. We've talked about it with Nate Duncan, probably the worst at it as far as any sort of national writer. But I think with these draft Twitter, it's there's national writers and then there's draft Twitter. I think there's like a second level of it, of these people who don't really have time to analyze these players the way that they're pretending that they do. And then they're so stuck in what their predictions were for these players that they will use anything to really attack players that they didn't have rated high enough. And I think there's still some of that going on with DeAndre Ayton, and there's going to be even more of that in the future with other players. And I think it's just a problem with draft Twitter in general, right?
You hit the nail on the head. This is not me condemning every single person who likes to post, their big boards and their mock drafts on Twitter. There are some fantastic analysts out there on draft Twitter and reasonable people. But for the most part, my problem with it is that there seem to be a majority of blowhards who are trying to build up their brand and are so obsessed with it that they're just completely stuck in their opinions. Draft arguments on Twitter should not be as aggressive as they are. Not even close to as aggressive as they are. If you're just willing to because if any of you out there who are crazy enough about college basketball to make your own big boards of your top 50 or top 100 prospects, if you've been doing that for multiple years, then you know for a fact, deep down, even if you're not willing to admit it, that you can go back and look at those lists and you were wrong about a lot of those players. And there's nothing wrong with that, because scouting is a very, very imprecise science. But if you recognize that you're wrong, as often as I'm sure all of you are, then you shouldn't be getting this aggressive as you are on these draft Twitter arguments about, little tiny differences in the games of different prospects. I mean, it's just this inability for so many so-called analysts to ever admit that they're wrong. It's absurd. And it just makes me much less likely to want to have anything to do with draft Twitter.
What it creates is this weird compartmentalizing of watching basketball. So what happens is these guys who say DeAndre Ayton has a problem with his defense, and that there's no way that he will be a historic big man or the absolute cornerstone of a team because of it. Then when they watch DeAndre Ayton play, that's the only thing they watch at that point. They're not able to appreciate what's good about his game or appreciate what he brings to the table as far as being a potential player who can kind of kill any small ball lineup that's thrown at the Suns in the future. And they only focus on those negative points. And actually, this leads nicely into our next hot take.
Hot take alert.
This hot take is from us, Sam. It's from me and you. This is the 2019 draft for the Phoenix Suns is Zion, Ja, or nothing. If it's anything after Zion or Ja, we should trade that pick and we should focus on building for the future. This is an interesting take from us, and it deserves a little criticism because it's not entirely true. And I think what I wanted to do in bringing up this point is talk about how imprecise the draft is in general. There will be other stars from this draft, probably, besides Zion or Ja. That's the highest probability. Will it be RJ Barrett? Maybe. Will it be Cam Reddish? Probably not, but maybe. There's a lot of players that come after those two guys that have the potential to make it. But to me, it's such a crapshoot, and it's so random in whether or not that's possible. And the second point on that, whether or not that's possible on the Suns, because we're not sure how good our development will be going forward in the future as far as player development. I just thought it was important to talk about. We're not saying, at least from my opinion, we're not saying there's not going to be other stars in this draft. What we're saying is there might not be, and these two guys are the most guaranteed. And if we're looking to try and build around the players that we have now that could be stars in Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, maybe we look to trade that pick. What do you think about this take?
I mean, yeah, it's a take from both of us, so obviously I agree. I will say there's maybe a little bit of a gambler's fallacy involved. The Suns have had a very bad track record of drafting and developing projects in the past, and I think our experiences with Dragan Bender and Marquise Chris and Josh Jackson are making us a little bit wary of our ability to find a good player in, say, the 4 to 8 range. There are a lot of prospects in that range, a lot of wings. Well, so first of all, that's the first problem. We don't know what the hell to do with all these wings. I don't know how Cam Reddish, Jarrett Culver, Romeo Langford, Nasir Little, I don't know how all these guys fit onto this roster necessarily. But beyond that, it's just the problem of, do we trust the Suns to find the right guy out of that crop of players when we've been so bad at it in the past? Probability says that it should be an equal chance of finding the star player every time, but maybe with our scouting department, we're just not capable of developing a player like that, and we should settle on the lower ceiling. So if you can't get Zion or Ja, you just give in and you trade for a competent point guard or a competent power forward, something that we haven't had in years and years.
And while we're taking aim at draft Twitter, I just want to remind people that the same blog boys that were right about Luka Doncic also said that Dragan Bender was the right pick. Some even saying that he should be picked number 2 overall in that draft. And I think, and I don't say that to say that, to me, Luka Doncic was more obvious. We can just look at what they averaged in EuroLeague. Dragan Bender with 4 points and Luka Doncic with 19. There's a big difference as far as what those two players were. But I still think it's important to remember that it's impossible to predict, and we're only guessing. And although Sam and I, we will take some time to really watch other players in this draft, I think it's important to know that we're not saying we're going to be right either, but we're also guaranteeing that we're not going to be stuck to our opinions if those end up being wrong in the future. We will evaluate these players on their own merit as far as what they're capable of doing in the NBA. And only that once they're in the NBA. We can talk about their potential and we can talk about everything beyond that. But what they actually do is the only thing that matters once they're in the NBA. And that's what we're going to look at going forward. So we'll see what this team does. Like we talked about before, the most interesting question going forward is who's making that decision. Could be James Jones. Maybe it's not. One last hot take.
Alert.
This one comes from DeAndre Ayton. This was from DeAndre Ayton's profile that we talked about earlier. I believe it was CBS that wrote it. They said, or DeAndre Ayton said, "Let me tell you a little secret. This team I'm on is actually a pretty good team. We just need a little bit more resources to help us when guys are tired. The coaching staff is working hard on making sure we compete every day. It's a fun environment. We might be losing, but it's just part of this. I want to be a trendsetter. I'm happy and ready to go every game. The Denver Nuggets, they went through the pain and the struggle. They weren't always the team they are today. That's how I see these other teams coming along, just growing with each other and playing for each other." This is a hot take by DeAndre Ayton, and the hot take comes from the sentence that says, "This team I'm on is actually a pretty good team."
Yeah, that's
I'm not so sure.
scorching hot take from our rookie. I don't know. I mean, I like to fall back on this idea that it becomes so easy if you can just get one or two actual generational talents. And that's where I'm at with Booker and Ayton right now. I'm just not sure if they're those types of players. But if you look at Philly after they got Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, the rapid pace with which they turned around from a 10-win team to being one of the contenders in the Eastern Conference, and then the trades came after that to sort of put the pieces into place. But those guys, Embiid and Simmons, are the ones who turned it around. Can Ayton and Booker do the same thing for Phoenix? I don't know, but there is precedent for those rapid turnarounds. Like he's talking about with a team like the Denver Nuggets. You know, once it happens very fast. The switch to, you know, talk about something that Robert Sarver was mentioning at the beginning of the season, the switch has absolutely not been flipped for Phoenix. But just got to hold out hope and hope that maybe it comes. Right now, this team is not a good team, DeAndre. Sorry to tell you.
Yeah, let me tell you a little secret, DeAndre. This team is not actually pretty good. And here's what I will say in his defense. What he's referring to is the young guys. And I think what's been encouraging about this team is that out of maybe the top 5 best guys on the team so far, DeAndre Ayton and Mikal Bridges are included in those best 5 guys. And those guys are going to be excellent NBA players going forward. And there's my prediction. Those guys are going to be good. And guess why I'm predicting that? They have been good. I've seen them do it in the NBA. So I think what he's referring to is there's a few guys on this team that are capable NBA players that will be good in the future. And he's saying that in a nice, friendly way because he's friends with the rest of the team. So while he is partially right about one thing, there are a few pretty good guys on this team. This team needs an overhaul. We just spent the last 20 minutes talking about it. There's going to be a lot of changes coming this summer. And hopefully it'll be a much better team. And what I can tell you for sure is that the 2 guys I think that will be on the team for sure are DeAndre Ayton and Devin Booker, and those are the 2 best guys going forward. So we'll see what it looks like around them in the future. But for now, sorry, DeAndre, this is not a great team, and I'm hoping that it'll be a lot better in the future. Anything else to say about that one, Sam?
No, that's about it. Ayton and Bridges give me hope. I think what you were saying is absolutely correct. Bridges, by the way, we were talking about DeAndre Ayton's advanced metrics before compared to a lot of the rookies. Bridges is right up there as well. He's the leader in steals, obviously, but if you again look at the advanced metrics like value over replacement player, he's right up there, right behind Doncic and Ayton. He's actually number 3 for all rookies. So I think the Suns have found a potential high impact player in the future there. But right now, not a good team.
McDonough's last stand. The one draft he actually hit on was the one he was fired right afterwards.
Well, we'll still see about, we were calling that Melton Chris trade a good trade for McDonough, but Marquise Chris is quietly putting together a good stretch of games in Cleveland, and I have to be honest, I'm still sort of rooting for Marquise. I have no ill feelings towards him. I think he's an idiot a lot of the time, but he's played some good basketball over the last couple weeks, and we have yet to really see what we truly have with Melton.
So everyone, I want to thank everyone that's subscribed to our YouTube channel as well over the last few weeks. We have some videos that posted since our last episode, 2 videos actually in the last week and a half. The first one was a video essay comparing Devin Booker to James Harden and talking about the pros and the cons of making Devin Booker a primary playmaker going forward. The other video is 11 beautiful minutes of Mikal Bridges just playing defense and only defense. Check out those videos. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Timeline, a Phoenix Suns channel on YouTube. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter. Thanks everyone for listening.
Great job. I just realized you didn't call me Maxie for the rest of the episode.
Yeah, damn it.
I forgot too as we were going.
just wrapped up another episode of The Timeline. I love this podcast. And if you're like me, you want as much Suns content as possible. That's why I listen to The Timeline every week. So if you want to go ahead and hear some more Phoenix Suns content, go ahead and listen to the Solar Panel, a Phoenix Suns show. We are available on Spotify, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Google Play, anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Go ahead and check out the Solar Panel, a Phoenix Suns show.
Sugar Ray Leonard, Roberto Duran, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, and Thomas Hearns. Legends, whose four-way rivalry defined one of the greatest eras in boxing history. Relive their decade of dominance in the new Showtime sports documentary, The Kings, a 4-part series premiering Sunday, June 6th, only on Showtime.